So this weekend we had the first edition of the Craig Jones Invitational. It's safe to say the event surpassed all expectations, including my own. So I'm going to do a quick recap on everything from how the atmosphere was, the venue, the rules, the judging, and of course the matches themselves. The first thing that really impressed me, that was also very different than other jiu-jitsu competitions, that seemed to turn out a lot better than I was expecting as well, was the atmosphere and how the environment was combined with the production. So when you're looking at something like the other major competitions, sometimes something just feels slightly off with the atmosphere. It's like it's overly intense off the mats, and then on the mats loses a bit of the intensity for some reason. It's almost like teenagers going around with the macho stuff off the mats, and then when they get on the mats, it's a lot of stalling and different things. So it felt the opposite for this event. I think because everyone was at such a high level, there was no posing, showing off, or overly macho-ness. But then when it got to the actual matches, obviously with the $1 million being on the line, everyone upped their intensity, and it felt like every movement mattered. People were trying to conserve energy but also be aggressive, and I feel like that really played off very well. The other thing that fed into that great atmosphere was the production and the aesthetic of the whole event. So I'm a big fan of tennis, for example, and I love the aesthetic that has. Prestigious, clean, professional, like very precise, which fits the sport as well. You look at something like tennis, everything is precise, from the production, how the courts are, and also how the players play. And I feel like jiu-jitsu should be something that goes down those lines more. I know it's very similar to MMA, but something about jiu-jitsu, the technical side of it, is usually elevated and more important compared to other sports. We talk about the techniques, we try and learn the techniques. So I think having that precision in the production that we did have at this event really played off well. It looked very prestigious, it looked great, and it would be something that I would be happy to show to one of my friends or family and say, look, this is the most important event in the sport, this is the biggest event we've ever had, and they would probably agree with me based on the appearance. The next big point of contention that I was curious about how would it play out during the event was both the rules and the Matspace, so the alley. Firstly, the alley was a massive success. I loved that it was actually quite big. It was like a double or triple size the normal competition Matspace, and a lot of the times they didn't actually have to use the walls at all. Like ideally any other professional event, I think they'll have to seriously consider, should we try and add this into our events somehow? Obviously it's very costly, so for some of the events that are trying to run 4, 5, 6 like professional style tournaments a year, this might not be doable for them, especially since they'll have to set it up and take it down within the few days that they've rented the venue. But I think a lot of places will at least look into it and see, could we do something similar, because it made for great matches. You saw, I think a lot of people were meeting in the middle much more, because the strategy of backing up was obviously not going to work. You saw a lot of people that did back up, they ended up leaning against the alley wall, and then someone would reach down, whip their legs out from underneath them, and it was an easy takedown. And again, you saw it was quite difficult for people to get some space, either to attack or get up from the bottom planted against the wall. And there was a few nice moments, especially in the over 80 kilo division, where they used the wall to either pressure in, try and push off and hop on the back, or to kind of walk around at a higher angle. And you saw that people were using that quite nicely as well. But I think the main thing that the alley walls did was it really de-incentivized backing up. It was just not a viable strategy at all. So people met in the middle. You even saw a lot more clinch wrestling where both people were pushing in, and this led to more takedowns and just more action in general. So I feel like that was a huge success. And again, it looked very clean, very nice. We had ADCC on this weekend as well. I'm going to have a separate video comparing the two. They were both fantastic events, but one of the biggest problems with ADCC is actually the Matspace. You saw even in the ADCC Open the day before, there was a metal wall just 2 feet outside the Matspace, and someone got thrown into it, hit their head off the wall. It was only covered by a curtain or something. So again, for safety, the CJI was looking very good, and it just looks professional. As I was saying before, you can't have people flying off the mats every 2 seconds. It's getting reset 10 times in a match. That's very frustrating for a spectator. And when you're going off the mat, it's also dangerous for the competitors. Every 100 times that happens, 2 or 3 people are going to get injured, and that's just not sustainable in the long run either. The other important issues that we saw play out at the event were the rules, the judging, and also the 3 5-minute rounds. So the rules, the main rule again, as we saw in the preview video, the main rule was whoever is initiating, pushing the pace, being more aggressive, and leading the match in a sense, was going to get the benefit of the doubt when it came to the judges. Obviously, if you had multiple close submission attempts, that was going to count as well. But the main person was who's pushing the pace, who is in attack mode, and who is in defense mode. I feel like this played out very well. The judges were quite consistent, and as well, they disagreed sometimes, which there's no problem with that. When there's very close rounds, you could see certain judges like J-Flow seem to be favouring the takedowns a little bit more, which is no surprise. Other judges favoured the guard play a little bit more. Could the guard player make the person on top defend? But I really liked how the judging and the rules fitted into the round format, especially with the open scoring. This is something that I would love to see going forward in other promotions. It gives it that extra sporting sense where the competitors were able to adjust round to round. They had that minute to rest, talk with their coaches, and change strategy if they need. And that's one of the best parts about sport, is how can you adapt on the fly and change your strategy. Sometimes when it's a straight 10-minute match and it's more about managing energy and deciding where and when to attack, there's not as much pre-planned strategy and tactics and changes throughout the match, which is one of the most exciting things to see. So hopefully other promotions will actually take a look at that. ADXC have been doing recently, I think it was 5 3-minute rounds, which is obviously very high paced, short break, and then very high paced again. But I watched a few of those matches and they were quite exciting. Some of the competitors would change their strategy from round to round, and again, as a viewer, that's fun to watch. The other thing that the 3 5-minute rounds did very well were, even in the boring matches, there was a couple of matches in the over 80 division that were less exciting, quite a slow pace, but the first round went to one competitor, the second round went to the second, and then even though it wasn't the most exciting, you really wanted to watch the third round to see who was going to have that little edge and come out on top. So I feel like the round format again played into everything else with the atmosphere, the rules, the judging, and it just led to a really professional and great to watch sporting event. Before we get into the individual matches themselves, one of the big topics that we saw play out at this event was the everlasting jiu-jitsu topic of guard versus passing. Which one is better? Which one scores more? So this is kind of the eternal problem in the sport, to be honest. You even see things like this play out at ADCC. In the no points period, you lose a point for pulling guard, but there's no points scored for getting taken down. So you have silly scenarios where people are trying to let themselves get taken down and encouraging the other person to take them down. But what happens when both people want to play that strategy and it's two people giving their leg and flopping over with any little gust of wind? It just looks silly. So that seems like a loophole that you should be covering up. But that's kind of the biggest scenario of guard versus passing. It seems difficult for the jiu-jitsu rule setters or tournaments to actually decide, is guard a neutral position or is it a disadvantageous position? So going by the rules in CJI, it seemed like it was a neutral position, and I think in general it played out quite well. People were allowed to pull guard, but they had to try stay aggressive, stay sitting up. But again, there was no one called for playing guard and being a bit more relaxed. It did, however, suit the top player because it just gives the top player a bit more chance to initiate an attack and be the offensive person in the match. Again, just the nature of guard is that it's a naturally more defensive position, kind of a counter-attacking position, if you will. So by playing guard in this kind of rule set, you're really giving yourself a difficult time initiating more than the other person on top. So you're going to have to make sure that when you can counter-attack, you're going to have to make it count extra, because you know the top player is going to have a bit more opportunity to put pressure on you. Levi Jones-Leary, one of the biggest surprises from the competition in the under 80 kilo division. Everyone knew he was going to be good, tough. He's been training with Lachlan Giles. He looks stronger than ever as well, and very ready and experienced for a tournament of this magnitude, let's say. He got off to a great start, submitting Roberto Jimenez and then beating Tai Ruotolo by decision. You could see in the first round, as Levi was attacking the leg, Tai scrambled onto the toe hold while his free leg was in a bit of a twisted position. You see the Ruotolos do this a lot. They're so flexible. They just throw themselves into positions where their limbs are a bit compromised. Usually they get away with it, but it seemed on this occasion that Tai injured his knee quite a bit. You could see him let out a yelp during the transition, and then for the rest of the match you saw he wasn't really himself. Still, he gave it his best shot, a fantastic performance by Levi, and he moved on to the semi-final then. Lower down in that under 80 kilo bracket then, you had Joseph Chen having a great performance so far throughout the event, and in the last minute getting caught with a calf slicer from Hulk. It didn't look like it was very tight initially, and it looked like Joseph was trying to defend, but it's almost as if the alley wall was slightly getting in the way, and obviously Hulk's strength was probably the highest in the whole bracket, and Joseph had to tap. Hopefully he didn't take too much damage from that, because he's one of the most exciting people to watch. But it was kind of an upset having seen the match. Before the match you might have said Hulk had a great chance, but throughout that match Joseph looked like the better competitor, but Hulk was able to take the win, move on to the semi-finals where he'd face Levi. Lower down in the bracket again then, we had Andrew Tackett putting on a guard passing clinic, and really just a cardio clinic against the likes of Nicky Ryan and Owen O'Flanagan, who scored his own impressive submission before that as well. I was very curious how Nicky Ryan would do before the event started, and it was a bit of a shame that we didn't get to see more of him throughout the competition. It did in fact turn out to be a pretty bad matchup for him, and I would just question, was he a bit overtrained? Some people seem to be saying to me, oh, Nicky mustn't have been training enough. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a bit overtrained for this event. Like, I know a lot of professionals in different sports, and some people actually get more out of training less. That's the difficult thing about jiu-jitsu. Everyone comes together in a group and they all share almost a community style training. It's very hard for individual people in an individual sport to get their own like bespoke training program when it comes to the jiu-jitsu room, because they need to be a training partner for the other people. So someone like Nicky Rod could do twice, 3 times the amount of training sessions that Nicky Ryan would do. And it's not to say which is better. It's just a different style, and it depends on your body, your personality, and also your moves. When I look at Nicky Ryan, if I was to put it in a sense of like a shooting game like Warzone or something like this, Nicky Ryan's more of a sniper. He has techniques that he's very sharp with, very good at finishing. He needs to find ways to get into good spots and pick his shots and make the most out of them. Someone then like Andrew Tackett, he's more run and gun with a submachine gun, MP5, something like this. So that's his style, and it fits his game, it fits his personality. And sometimes you see people like Nicky Ryan, who's more of a sniper archetype, if you will. He's trying to fit his game into that run and gun style, and it's just never going to be as effective as if he finds ways to pick his shots and make the most out of it. And Levi was someone who actually had a bit more of the Nicky Ryan style, where he's very technical, very precise, very isometrically strong and good at finishing. So against Jimenez wants to move around run and gun style. Levi was just very calm, relaxed, sharp, and when he got his opportunity, he just latched onto it, and then he was able to get the finish from there, and a very efficient 2-minute match. So there's no reason why I see Nicky Ryan can't do that. It's just sometimes he's caught in between. Am I a grindy wrestler, or am I a precision fighter in terms of body lock passing, guard play, things like this? So don't count Nicky Ryan out. I think we'll have him back very soon competing at the highest level and winning more matches like he did against JT. Moving on to the under 80 semi-finals then, we had Levi take out Hulk by decision. Clearly the better grappler. Hulk was doing quite well for the first couple of rounds, being a bit more patient, trying to put pressure. Levi just about edging those rounds, and then in the last round we saw a beautiful sequence. Hulk had to be a bit more aggressive because he was losing, and this is another way that these round formats are very good for pushing the action. Hulk had to try pass more, and then as soon as he did, Levi, again using that counter-attacking style, was able to latch on to a Choi bar, get to the back and ride out a great win, moving on to the final. In the other semi-final then, we had the greatest jiu-jitsu match of all time in my opinion. The other one that I would put up there is probably Gary Tonin against Husmar Palhares in Polaris, which is a funny coincidence itself. But this was one of the best matches I've ever seen. I was sitting forward on the couch. I was watching this at about, I'd say, 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning here in Ireland. I was trying not to be shouting, waking up the other people in the house, but it was just that exciting. I had to sit up close to the TV. I didn't know who was going to win. I was slightly leaning towards Cade in terms of hoping that he would win, just because I feel like the Ruotalos deserved to get the $1 million from this competition. Just the body of work that they've put in over the last 4 or 5 years. I feel like the two of them top pound for pound in the world grapplers. So I was kind of hoping they would win, even though I'm a big fan of the Tackett brothers as well. And it just goes to show that having a brother is probably the ultimate meta in the sport. But this was one of the best matches I've ever seen. Probably the best in my opinion. Back and forth, great wrestling, great aggression, great gas tank on both of them, and just a will to win that we didn't really see in any other match in the same kind of raw sense. You really felt that both people, when they were in a bad position, they just dug deep and they were able to get out. Some other people, when things started to go from bad to worse, they kind of accepted their fate. But this match was just crazy. Cade would be having Andrew right on his back and he would just spaz out and find his way out of the back just by pure intuition based on his years of training. And I think in the end, Cade was the deserving winner. He was just able to turn up the pace at the right time in the last round. But it definitely took a lot out of him. I'm glad he didn't get injured going into the final, but it definitely took the wind out of his sails for the final then, which wasn't too long afterwards. In that final match then, we had Levi against Cade. We were expecting that it would be basically a $1 million pass versus sweep, 5 rounds, which I actually didn't know beforehand. I was happy to see that, and you could see that both competitors did actually take it a bit slower in the first 2 rounds. Cade was actually quite inactive in the first 2 rounds and lost the first 2 rounds. And it seemed like halfway through the third, he was still slow enough with the pace. And if he lost that 3rd round, that was it. He started then, in the last 2 minutes of the 3rd round, started to pick up the pace, initiate more, use the knee cut more, and he started to figure out Levi's guard. He was doing a great job of controlling Levi's free leg so it wasn't able to loop around for some of those Lachlan Giles style K-guard attacks that he was using so well before. So as the match went on, Cade really started to figure out Levi's guard and kind of where things were very dangerous for him and where he could actually put a bit more pressure. So he started to up the aggression from the midpoint of the match onwards. And in my opinion, based on the rules, he deserved to be the winner. I heard a lot of different opinions because Levi did have a few good attacks in the last 2 rounds as well, and all he needed to do was steal one of the rounds. But again, based on the scoring, Cade was the one who was pushing the pace, making Levi defend. Okay, so if you think of how many times did each person force the other person into defensive movement, even if you didn't get a full score like a pass or anything like this, Cade definitely made Levi defend his guard and defend himself positionally much more than Levi was able to make Cade defend, which he did on occasion. But I just think overall it was the right decision based on this rule set, and I think that's the best rule set to have to keep the fight entertaining. Because if Levi had have won that match, what it says about the rules is the guard, you only need to do a few attacking movements from guard versus the person on top needs to do much more attacking movements than the person who's on the bottom. And the thing that's the issue with that is it's very hard to stop someone who wants to do the guard playing strategy. So it's a strategy that you can force on the person. No one can stop Levi from pulling guard on them. The only thing they can do is pull guard as well. And then he was confident in his passing to come up on top, or from the double guard pull, use the Berimbolo. So you see someone like Mikey Musumeci use this strategy very effectively. He's going to pull guard. There's nothing you can do to stop him. That's all he needs to train, basically. The only other thing you can do is pull guard with him, and he's a master of that position where both people have pull guard. So I'm happy that the rules incentivize the top position a bit more because it makes the guard player be more aggressive, attack more, and not just block, defend, and get off 1 or 2 counter attacks around to win the match. So I'm happy that it played out that way. I know a lot of people will agree, disagree. You can let me know down in the comments who you think should have won that under 80 kilo match. But I'm sure they'll compete again in the near future, maybe even next year at CJI 2 if it goes ahead. Then when it came to the over 80 kilo division, this one was a lot more wrestling heavy compared to guard being a bit more effective in the under 80. Most people were fighting for the top position. There was a lot more clinching, wrestling. But again, because of the round format and the walls and just the general arena and atmosphere, it was a lot more exciting than it would have been at a different promotion. They would have been going out of bounds every 2 minutes. There would have been very little action and people would have been hoping to win by referee type decision. The biggest upset of the tournament happened in the first round, Victor Hugo getting submitted by Lucas Canard. Probably a combination of Canard being an unknown specialist in these type of leg attacks, using the K-guard, come up on top, and then drop back in the saddle straight into the heel hook as well. Didn't really give Victor Hugo a chance to defend. Victor Hugo probably didn't know much about Canard, wasn't respecting him enough. He was a little bit smaller, and he just got caught out. Started off a bit too slow, Everyone was hyping him up to win the whole tournament. In a way, it's a shame that we didn't get to see him go up against Nicky Rod at some stage, give him a bit more competition than he had throughout the event. But fair play to Lucas Cannard. He really capitalized on his moment, won 50 grand submission of the night bonus, and he just hit a beautiful sequence on Victor Hugo that was, to be honest, very hard for Victor to stop. So again, this is Lucas playing a very smart sniper-like approach to the competition. He's not going to go out and try and beat Victor Hugo at his game or play the standard game of trying to do everything the correct way, should we say. He's just straight into guard, straight into his moves, and then when he came up, he did something unexpected, dropped back on the heel, and congratulations to him. He got a really nice win and a big upset in the first round. The other most notable early match that was quite exciting was Joao Gabriel Rocha against William Tackett. And I feel like William Tackett showed amazing jiu-jitsu in this match. Very aggressive, probably over-aggressive to be honest. Joao Gabriel, he just stood there stone-faced, very solid, and just absorbed a lot of William's attacks for basically the whole first round. He lost that round, but then William seemed visibly more tired. Joao started to use his weight very effectively in the next two rounds, and he was able to wear William out. And in the last round, he spent the whole thing in a mounted submission. Didn't get the finish, but got huge scores from the judges and was able to take the win. So I feel like if William had another chance to go at this match, he might approach it quite differently, especially now that he's felt how good Joao Gabriel actually is. I remember training with Joao Gabriel probably 10 years ago back in Miami, and he didn't necessarily know much technique. He mightn't be able to teach you too much, but then when you saw him roll on the mats, he was one of the most natural and also one of the most athletic people I'd ever seen. This was 10 years ago when he was getting silver medals in ADCC Absolute divisions. So he's definitely someone that's going to be very difficult to just throw everything at him straight away and overwhelm him. So Joao really showed his experience in that match. I'm sure William will learn a lot. He has great jiu-jitsu. But unfortunately for him, Joao ended up moving on to the next round. Probably the biggest takeaway from the whole over 80 bracket was just how it was the Nicky Rod show. So he was the most dominant by a mile, was very clear, very focused. Even in the lead up to the competition, I saw a few interview style clips with him where they were asking him, what do you think about the rules? Do you like this? Do you like that? Do you like the mats? Do you like the round format? Everything. And all he kept saying was, I like the $1 million. Okay, and you could really feel his focus on the night. His game plan was clear. Wrestle, get on top. If the wrestling was tricky, go to the bottom and wrestle up to get on top. And then he was hunting the back. He looked like he was hunting the back much more than usual even. He wasn't as tight in some of his transitions. So as he would pass the guard, even if it was using a tight body lock style pass, he was giving the person on bottom a little bit more space than usual to get to the turtle. And you could see he had practiced his turtle back takes. He was very sharp with them. And he probably did a different style back take in every round, ending in the rear naked choke, including the final. He went up against a great opponent in the final in Felipe Andrew. He had a really exciting run where he got some good submissions, showcased a more guard-heavy style, which was actually a really nice addition to this over 80 kilo bracket. But in the end, as I was saying, it was the Nicky Rod show. No one was going to stop him, and congrats to him for winning $1 million. He really deserved it. He's another person who has had an amazing past 2 or 3 years. So it was good to see him get some big wins and really get rewarded for the hard work that he's been doing. We also had 2 quite interesting super fights as well throughout the event while we were waiting for the finals, trying to give the competitors a rest. Because again, on the last day, the event wasn't as drawn out. So we needed something to fill the time. And it was fun to not just have the matches have different announcing, some prize giveaways. I know maybe some people didn't like that, but I just enjoyed that it changed the pace slightly. And again, it was done almost in a, I wouldn't say family style sense, but it wasn't the macho weird type that other events would do. It was just very clean and almost very approachable in still a very professional way. So I actually enjoyed the different cutaways, even if some of the stand-up comedy things weren't the best. I'm sure they landed a lot better in the arena from what I've heard. But again, it was just nice for a slightly different change of pace. The matches were very intense up to that point, especially after Cade and Andrew Tackett in the semi-finals. So I feel like I needed a rest as much as the 2 lads did after watching that. So I was happy. A little change of pace, take their time, and then get the super fights out. So the first one we had was Fionn Davies against Mackenzie Dern. Another really exciting match. Mackenzie's shown some great grappling in the UFC the last few years. She's one of the big ambassadors for the sport over there, especially being an ADCC champion herself. Unfortunately for her, she was going up against Fionn Davies, who's proven over the last few years to be almost unbeatable in the women's division, taking goals in the gi, no gi, ADCC, you name it. So the match started off quite competitive, even though you could really see the size difference. Both girls came out very intense, but over the course of a few minutes, some nice exchanges. Fionn was able to impose her game a bit more, get to a nice judo-style headlock hip throw, and once she was on top, she started to put the pressure on, get to some dominant positions, and in the end finished with a really nice triangle armbar, very reminiscent of her big breakout win over Bia Mesquita in ADCC, which would be another match that's worth checking out. Very exciting and another very interesting submission. Then after that, we had the much hyped Craig Jones against Gabby Garcia. I feel like this match turned out better than I expected and about as well as it could have. There was some really interesting storylines playing out through the match that I actually wasn't expecting. So it started off, both competitors were really showing their personality. Gabby came out imposing, ready to go. Craig slid in straight from taking a shot of whiskey, drinking a beer on the sidelines. Both of them had a very respectful match. I wasn't expecting anything different. Neither person was there to go hard. They were there to... Basically, the build-up was the real match that they were doing, and then they were going to have a fun show, almost like the Super Bowl halftime show. That's how I viewed it. It wasn't going to be a crazy competitive match ever. But we actually saw some interesting techniques. Craig got to show some of his nice escape movements. Gabby still looked quite athletic, even though she probably lost a step since her more dominant times in the past. And then it was really after the match where a lot of the most interesting moments took place. I really feel like Gabby's speech was fantastic. I didn't know she was that articulate or that thoughtful, to be honest. And I was actually very impressed and I really enjoyed it. I actually took quite a bit from it. The big takeaway for her there, she was saying, look, I gave up my chance to be in ADCC Hall of Fame to come here and do this. I felt like I wasn't respected in ADCC, and I was respected here, which just goes to show. It seemed like a lot of the jokes leading up to it were slightly, some people could say they were disrespectful towards Gabby, but she's always in on the joke. You know, it's the difference of laughing at someone or laughing with them, and I'm sure she can give as good as she can take as well. But she was saying she gave up her Hall of Fame moment in ADCC to come and support Craig Jones Invitational, support the fighter pay, and all these different charity initiatives that they were doing. And again, not just that, also supporting a more transparent, professional side of the sport and just bringing it to a new level and giving it a different look. So she was supporting all that, gave up a lot of big chances that she had being ADCC Hall of Fame. I'm sure that in the past that's something that would have meant a lot to her. And then she had the great line about, guys, don't ever do anything for a medal. Do something because you feel like it's the right thing to do. And I really felt like that's maybe an idea that I would have had a lot in the past, but then as you come up through the sport, you get so caught up in being online and it's all about what's your achievement here, what's your achievement there, how many medals do you have at this competition. But really at the end of the day, it's about more than that. The medal is just a representation of all the other things that actually matter. So Gabby had a really nice moment there in the post-fight interview that I thought kind of rounded out and gave a good finish to the big 2-3 year saga. As silly as it might have seemed on the outside, in the end, I feel like it actually had a really good ending. And that's the most important thing. If you ever watch a film that's not great throughout, but the ending is just perfect, you'll remember that as a good film. The opposite, if it's quite a good film throughout, the ending is just dog shit, that's not going to be something you're going to want to watch again. So really props to Gabby for that. I feel like she was very articulate and even slightly profound after what seemed on the surface to be quite a silly, but still fun match for the halftime show style part of the event. Rounding it all out then, the first Craig Jones Invitational seemed to be a great success. Everything I mentioned before, I hope they take the good things and bring it into next year. I'm curious to see what will happen going forward. Craig hit a nice mic drop at the end of the evening saying, let's do it again next year. I'm assuming next year, maybe the year after. So hopefully they can continue using this format and bring it through to the following years. The things I'm curious to see how they play out are how they approach the competitors going forward. Are they going to have more divisions? Are they going to have more competitors in each division? Or will they have less competitors in each division? where are they going to get the prize money? Will they keep having the same benefactor, or do they even need that? I wouldn't be surprised if it turned into an annual event, which would be fantastic, where they had less prize money, which I think people would still be okay with. It doesn't have to be $1 million every year. You've kind of used that to prove the brand, bring the great intensity and atmosphere and prestige to the event. So they don't have to have the $1 million on the line every year. I would rather have 4 divisions and $500,000. I also wouldn't be surprised if they do want to include more divisions. The one issue is the event was quite long. On the first day, it was almost 10 hours long. I stayed up and watched it all, but I'm not sure if a lot of people would be able to do that. So it was quite long on the first day. If they want to add extra divisions, they might have to look at halving the amount of people in each division. So I'd have no problem seeing 4 divisions with 8 people in each one. Do the first round on the first day and then do semis and finals again on the last day. So that might be an approach they take. I hope they don't go down the route of doing multiple mats. That's something that's been done and it just takes away from the show. I feel like one of the best things at this event was that there was one mat, one match, everything was set up perfectly, your focus was all on that, and again, it really just felt like a proper sporting event. When you're watching something else, you don't want it to be chopping and changing, going back and forth, and I missed the first half of this one, and now they're showing the wrong mat on the camera, and they're putting the wrong commentary on this one, and it just adds to a lot more headaches and takes away from the clean look, and again, the prestige that they've built up. So that would be something I'd be curious to see what they do going forward. I'm sure no matter what it is, it's going to be another fantastic event, and I'm looking forward to it next year. If they're having a division for the lighter athletes, I'll definitely be finding a way to get my name in the hat for that, or hoping to qualify somehow and put on a great show for everyone. There's definitely been a lot of people in the past that have said, and maybe thought, even myself included, that Jiu-Jitsu will never be a spectator sport, but I think we're definitely on the right track with these style events, and especially the mat was really incredible, the production. So I feel like we're definitely on the right track, and it's safe to say that one day, hopefully quite soon, Jiu-Jitsu will be a popular spectator sport. Hope everyone enjoyed the video on the quick recap on the Craig Jones Invitational this weekend. I'll try and make a few more videos as well, one breaking down, comparing ADCC and the Craig Jones Invitational. Also going over ADCC and especially the finals results. The finals over there in that competition were very exciting. And as well, I'm going to do a breakdown of what was, in my opinion, the greatest Jiu-Jitsu match of all time, Andrew Tackett versus Cade Ruotolo. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and check those out, and I'll see everyone soon.